The new operations director called it workforce optimization. I called it what it was, getting rid of the highest paid guy to boost quarterly numbers. After 20 years of keeping their production lines running, I was suddenly redundant. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't just an employee. I was the guy who held their entire operation together with custom solutions no one else understood. My name is Vincent Torres, and this is how my termination became their nightmare. I'm 45 years old, been working at Pinnacle Foods Manufacturing in Phoenix since I was 25. Started right out of technical college when they were still a small regional company making frozen dinners for 3 grocery chains. Now they're owned by Global Foods Corp, supply frozen meals to half the country, and run 3 shifts around the clock. But the machines were still the same ones I'd been nursing along for 2 decades. Not because the company was cheap. Well, not entirely, but because I'd made them work so well that replacing them never seemed necessary. I'd modified controllers, rewrote software, created workarounds for discontinued parts. Those production lines ran better than machines half their age because I understood every bolt, every sensor, every line of code. The first sign of trouble came 6 months ago when Global Foods brought in Miranda Walsh as the new operations director. Fresh MBA, consulting background, spoke in corporate buzzwords like operational efficiency and lean manufacturing. She spent her first month walking the floor with a tablet, asking questions about everything except how things actually worked. "Vincent," she said, during our first one-on-one meeting, "I've been reviewing our labor costs. Your salary is significantly above industry standard for a maintenance technician." "I'm not a maintenance technician," I corrected. "I'm the systems engineer. I designed half the automation you see out there." She tapped her tablet. "According to corporate, your job classification is senior maintenance specialist, and frankly, some of your responsibilities could be handled by junior technicians at a fraction of the cost." I should have seen it coming then. But after 20 years, you get comfortable. You assume the company values what you bring to the table. You assume loyalty means something. The writing on the wall became clearer when Miranda hired Summit Industrial Solutions as automation consultants. They spent 3 weeks interviewing operators, studying our processes, asking detailed questions about my custom programming. I cooperated fully. I showed them everything, explained how each system worked, even shared documentation I'd created over the years. "Just want to understand our current capabilities," Miranda explained when I asked about the consultants. "Global Foods is considering some upgrades across all facilities." 2 weeks later, Summit submitted their report. I wasn't supposed to see it, but my friend Carlos in IT accidentally forwarded it to me instead of Miranda. The recommendation was clear. Legacy automation systems can be replaced with standardized solutions, reducing dependency on specialized personnel and achieving 35% cost savings in annual labor expenses. Specialized personnel. That was me. The termination meeting happened on a Tuesday morning in March. Miranda, HR Director Janet Kim, and some guy from Global Foods Corporate I'd never met before. They had it all planned out: security escort, cardboard box, the whole theatrical production. "Vincent, we're restructuring the maintenance department," Miranda began, reading from a script. "Your position is being eliminated as part of our operational efficiency initiative." I sat there quietly, watching her avoid eye contact. "We're prepared to offer a generous severance package, 6 weeks pay plus your accrued vacation time. You'll also receive positive references for future employment opportunities." 6 weeks. After 20 years. "What about the automation systems?" I asked. "Who's taking over the programming and modifications?" "Summit Industrial will be handling our automation needs going forward," the corporate guy said. "They've assured us they can maintain all existing systems and implement improvements." I almost laughed. Summit had spent 3 weeks asking me how everything worked. Now they were confident they could improve it. "I see," I said finally. "And the custom software I developed? The modified controllers? The integration protocols I wrote?" Miranda shifted uncomfortably. "All company property, naturally. Summit will have access to whatever documentation is needed." That was the moment I knew they had no idea what they were dealing with. See, what Miranda and her consultants didn't understand was that my 20 years at Pinnacle wasn't just about fixing machines. It was about building relationships with the equipment, with the operators, with the quirks and workarounds that kept everything running smoothly. Those relationships can't be documented in a manual or transferred to a new contractor. I signed their paperwork, shook hands professionally, and walked out with my cardboard box. No drama, no speeches, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing they'd made a very expensive mistake. The systems I'd built over 2 decades weren't just automation, they were solutions to problems that didn't exist anymore. The mixer in Building C that would overheat unless you cycled it every 4 hours. The packaging line that jammed if the humidity was above 60%, unless you adjusted the timing by exactly 2.3 seconds. The freezer tunnels that required custom temperature curves because the original control software couldn't handle our specific product mix. I hadn't just maintained these systems, I'd made them better than they were designed to be. And all of that knowledge, all those solutions were walking out the door with me. 3 days after my termination, I got a call from Carlos. "Vincent, man, you need to know what's happening here," he whispered into the phone. "Summit's guys are freaking out. They can't figure out why the packaging line keeps jamming." "Did they check the humidity settings?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They're blaming the operators, saying they're not following proper procedures." I shook my head. The operators were following exactly the procedures Summit had given them. Procedures that worked fine when humidity was low, but failed catastrophically when Phoenix hit its summer moisture levels. "It gets worse," Carlos continued. "Miranda's called 3 emergency meetings this week. Production is down 15%, and they can't figure out why." I thanked Carlos and hung up. Part of me felt bad for the operators, the people I'd worked alongside for years. But they'd chosen their side when they stayed silent during my escort from the building. The real vindication came 2 weeks later when my former supervisor, Rick, called me directly. "Vincent, I know this is awkward, but we're having some issues with the freezer tunnels. The temperature controls are acting up, and Summit can't figure out the programming." "Sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. "What does Summit suggest?" "They want to replace the entire control system, $200,000 for new equipment, plus installation and programming." I suppressed a laugh. The acting up was probably the monthly calibration routine I'd programmed to compensate for sensor drift. Summit didn't know it existed because it wasn't in any official documentation. "That sounds expensive," I said. "Look, Vincent, I'll be straight with you. Would you consider coming in as a consultant, just to look at the problem? I appreciate the call, Rick, but I'm exploring other opportunities right now." It was true. Word travels fast in the industrial automation world, and companies that knew my reputation had already started reaching out. 2 job offers, both with significant pay increases. The irony wasn't lost on me. But I wasn't ready to take another job yet. I had some thinking to do about what 20 years of loyalty had really been worth. The calls became more frequent after that. First Rick, then Miranda herself, then people from Global Foods corporate. Each time the problems were getting worse. The mixer overheating, the packaging line jamming constantly, quality control failures on products that had been perfect for years. "Vincent," Miranda said during one particularly desperate call, "we'd like to bring you back as a contractor to help with the transition. 6 months at your previous salary rate." "My consulting rate is $150 per hour," I replied. 4-hour minimum, paid in advance. Silence on the line. That's more than triple your previous hourly rate. That's the rate for specialized consulting. You said so yourself. I'm specialized personnel." She hung up without agreeing to anything. 2 days later, Janet from HR called back. They'd accept my consulting rate for critical issues only. I agreed to a 1-day consultation to assess their problems. Walking back into Pinnacle 6 weeks after my termination felt surreal. The security guard who'd escorted me out now waved me through with a visitor's badge. The production floor that had hummed smoothly for years was clearly struggling. Operators looked stressed, maintenance crews were everywhere, and the smell of overheated machinery hung in the air. Carlos met me at the main control room. "It's a disaster, Vincent. Summit's been here every day for 3 weeks, and they're making things worse." I spent 4 hours methodically checking each system. The problems were exactly what I'd expected, a cascade of failures that started when they disabled the custom routines I'd programmed. The mixer overheating because they'd removed the cycling protocol. The packaging line jamming because they'd optimized the timing without understanding why I'd set it that way. The freezer tunnels running inefficiently because they'd tried to standardize the temperature curves. Each fix was simple if you understood the underlying problem. But Summit didn't understand, and their attempts to solve issues with standard solutions were making everything worse. I documented everything and presented my findings to Miranda and the Summit team leader, a cocky engineer named Brad, who clearly resented my presence. The issues stem from removing custom programming that compensated for equipment-specific limitations, I explained, keeping my tone professional. "Your standardized solutions work fine in theory, but they don't account for the actual operating environment." Brad bristled. "Those custom programs were just workarounds for poorly maintained equipment. Modern systems don't require such patches." "These systems do," I replied evenly. "That's why they've run reliably for 15 years while newer installations at your other clients fail regularly." Miranda looked uncomfortable. "Can you fix the immediate problems? I can implement temporary solutions today, but for permanent fixes you'll need someone who understands these systems long-term." "Summit is perfectly capable of," Brad started. "Summit has been here 3 weeks and made everything worse," I interrupted. "Your client is losing $50,000 per day in reduced production. How much longer do you want to prove your competence?" The room went silent. I spent the rest of the day implementing quick fixes, restoring some of my original programming, adjusting parameters, showing Summit's technicians exactly what they'd broken. By evening shift, production was back to 90% capacity. "How much for you to stay another week?" Miranda asked as I was leaving. "1 week would be $6,000 plus expenses. But Miranda, you need to understand, I can fix these problems temporarily, but they'll keep coming back unless someone who understands these systems is maintaining them." She nodded grimly. "Send me a proposal." That night, I drafted a consulting agreement unlike anything I'd ever written. Not just fixing problems, but documenting everything properly, training their people, and establishing maintenance protocols that would prevent future failures. It was comprehensive, expensive, and exactly what they needed. The proposal was for a 6-month engagement at $150 per hour, 30 hours per week minimum. Total cost, approximately $120,000, plus expenses for any replacement parts or software licenses needed. Miranda called the next morning. "Vincent, this proposal is more than we pay Summit for a full year. How much has Summit saved you so far?" I asked. Another silence. "The board approved it," she said finally. "When can you start?" "Over the next 6 months, I completely rebuilt their automation documentation, trained their new maintenance staff, and established protocols that would keep the systems running efficiently. But I also did something else. I started my own consulting company. Torres Industrial Solutions launched quietly while I was still working at Pinnacle. Just me, a website, and business cards. But word was spreading in the industry about the consultant who'd saved Pinnacle from their optimization disaster. The first external client came from an unexpected source, Brad from Summit Industrial. His company had lost 3 clients after similar automation upgrades failed, and he was desperate to salvage his reputation. "I'll pay you directly," he said, during a coffee meeting. "Subcontract through Summit. We need someone who can fix what we broke." I almost said no out of principle, but his desperation was amusing, and the money was excellent. "My rate for Summit projects is $200 per hour," I said. "Take it or leave it." He took it. 6 months later, my consulting agreement with Pinnacle ended, but they immediately signed a new contract for ongoing support, 10 hours per week at $175 per hour. Miranda had learned the value of institutional knowledge the hard way. Torres Industrial Solutions now had 12 clients, 3 full-time technicians, and a waiting list for new projects. The specialty: rescuing companies from failed automation upgrades, preserving legacy system knowledge, and proving that sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. The real victory came a year after my termination, when Global Foods offered to buy my consulting company. Not to eliminate it, but to make it their exclusive automation partner across all facilities. The offer was substantial, must enough to secure my daughter's college education and my own retirement. But I turned it down. Why? Asked the Global Foods executive during our meeting. This would solve all our automation challenges across the enterprise. Because I said, you'd just be buying what you already had and threw away. Some lessons are worth more than money. I kept Torres Industrial Solutions independent. Today, we're the company other companies call when their automation upgrades fail, when their consultants can't solve problems, when they need someone who understands that technology isn't just about having the newest systems, it's about making any system work better than it was designed to. Miranda left Global Foods 6 months after my consulting contract ended. Her operational efficiency initiatives had cost the company over $2 million in lost production, emergency repairs, and consulting fees. She's working for a small logistics company now, probably wondering why her textbook solutions don't always work in the real world. I ran into Rick, my old supervisor, at an industry conference last month. He's now the plant manager at Pinnacle, promoted after the previous manager was reassigned following the automation debacle. You know what the funny thing is, he said over drinks, we're more profitable now than we've ever been. All because we learned to value what we had instead of chasing what was trendy. Sometimes, I replied, the best upgrade is understanding what you already have. As I drove home that night, I thought about the lesson I'd learned. Getting fired wasn't the end of my career. It was the beginning of understanding my true value. 20 years of knowledge, experience, and relationships can't be replaced by consultants with PowerPoint presentations. It can only be appreciated or discarded. They chose to discard it. I chose to make them pay market rate to get it back. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's making them pay full price for what they threw away.